Hey everybody, this is Mike from Reelblack, and I'm with
Charles Woods.
and we are in the Bronx, New York, and we have a very special conversation for you, about an hour, talking about all the things that we didn't get a chance to talk about since we last met. And
Yeah, a few things. I don't know how cogent we were, cause I think better on a full stomach. But
yeah, so you get to watch us eat and talk about what we talk
yeah,
about.
two brothers eating again in the Boogie Down Bronx.
So watch it now. Enjoy. If you enjoy that kind of content, we're happy to do it again because we love to eat.
And,
And we
peace
love-
and blessings, and I love you all.
We're having breakfast. Hey, this is Mike, and tried out this new camera, and I'm with,
Charles Woods.
and we're in the Boogie Down Bronx today.
Yeah, this is as usual, two guys eating.
At Julia's, which is in the South Bronx, and it's homemade food. And this is my second time coming. I'm bringing you. This is your first time here, right?
Yeah.
You enjoying the meals? Home cooked. I think it's really good quality.
It's home cooked. I thought they cooked it here.
You know what I'm talking about. So if you're in the Bronx, you want to come to Julia's. This is our Anthony Bourdain episode of the Reelblack podcast, and we're talking about things. So while you watch us devour this delicious food, there's a few
I think
things
the
that
last
going
time
on.
we did this, where were we on the way to Pittsburgh?
Mm-hmm.
We were having breakfast.
Yeah, so I guess, just for full disclosure, I guess I should explain the whole reason why I'm in the Bronx. We're working on a project, Hush Hush, but, it's given us some breathing room to really digest, like, what this next season of Reelblack TV is going to be about, and what we want to share with people, in terms of legacy.
Yeah.
So you didn't make it. We spent some time with Woody King.
Yeah, I would have loved to have been there. Woody King is someone I've been very inspired by, and I would have loved to have been there to ask him some questions.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing, I basically took a week off to come up so we could work on the project, and it's October. The weather's been crazy, so staying in a hotel and went to sleep with the air conditioner on. I never use air conditioning at home, and now it's just, so if I sound deeper, maybe it's a good thing. Like, do I have the Barry White voice, or do I just sound sick? I don't know.
I just want to say,
I got all this stuff.
we've been losing a lot of giants, and sympathies go out to the families of Grady Tate and Fats Domino.
Yeah, actually, I don't know how many people. Well, a lot of people. Our Reelblack theme song that we used at the beginning of our TV show in Philly, "Be Black Baby." That is actually a sample of a Grady Tate record. So I have a secret love for Grady Tate, and I would have loved to have talked to him on the show. Great drummer, for those who don't know. And so Be Black Baby, I don't know. I mean, can you speak to it? It comes from this movie called Hi Mom, I think it is, or Greetings, one of the two. I think it's Hi Mom, or maybe it's Greetings. Brian De Palma, who we all know for like Carrie and De Palma, Scarface, of course. Before he was a mainstream filmmaker, he was a New York Underground guy, and he made two movies I consider classic. I just love the subversive nature. Early appearance by Robert De Niro, Hi Mom and Greetings. Greetings being the first movie, and Hi Mom being the second one. And I guess it's Greetings it's a satire. It's about these three guys who are trying to dodge the draft, and they go through all these different misadventures and things. And at one point, towards the end of the movie, they go to an experimental theater, and the whole thing is we're gonna torture white people, make the theater crowd, make them experience just black hate. So they go into a dark room. It's almost like a horror house where they get yelled at for 90 minutes about how privileged they are. And the soundtrack to that sequence is "Be Black Baby," and it's a catchy tune. So, if you've seen it, say something about it. If not, just check it out. It's worth seeking. Greetings.
I know what film you're talking about, and the title. You may have the title right, or something's not clicking for me with the title.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned two things: the draft and horror. Draft, they may have to implement the draft again. Looks like who knows how many wars we'll be in with this guy in office.
Yeah, I mean, want to say anything about the current? I mean, every week is a news story, right? So we can't even keep track of what to be upset about. But since the last time we really seriously talked about it was when we were in Pittsburgh after the speech. But I mean, what do you think is going on?
Well, along the lines of what we're researching and we're going to have out soon is just this nation is in trouble. Okay, and it's in trouble because technology, which should have made us more intelligent, is really enhanced and expedited the dumbing down of America. And when you don't have a population that's well informed, then the powers that be will use everything they can to manipulate us so that they can control us in a way that we're cutting off our noses, to spite our face.
And to the point, I guess we should give a big plug. I mean, there's a site. I mean, I know you're watching this on YouTube. Canopy, Kanopy. We spent yesterday just in the process of our research. We discovered so many great documentaries on this streaming site, which is available for free if you have access to certain libraries. So in Philadelphia library card, you can't have access to Canopy, but in New York, if you have a New York Public Library card or Brooklyn Public Library card, or if you're a library card from any of the universities, or you have free access to basically a Netflix. How would you describe it? Canopy.com.
It's an oasis. It's an oasis of information. Independent works, a lot of it. That
the entire California newsreel collection.
The ideology of independent filmmakers who have focused on a number of themes, but you can get politics, media studies, race studies. It's just
it's not hiding. It's not hiding. It's categorized. It's right in front of you. So the Kanopy, and if you have access to it, you can watch up to 10 movies a month for free. And what we were watching was the Tim Wise documentary, White Like Me, which I think speaks to what you were saying.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I told you, I had some issues with someone or some people who want to dismiss certain people because of their skin color and say they can never be uh, their voice could never be a legitimate voice for our liberation. I don't buy that. Um, a lot of when someone posed the question, well, you say you know a lot about your history. What is that a consequence of? Only information that you've gotten from books that were written by white people? I mean, black people.
By black people.
So we got to be careful. We can't replace. I always tell you, I don't care what anyone says. I'm not about getting into no echo chamber. It's if it doesn't make sense, it's senseless. And study the information, analyze the information, weigh it. Don't accept everything you see. Don't get into this conspiracy thing. But don't turn things away because you doubt the source.
Without question. And another thing, I was watching on Canopy is the W.E.B. Du Bois documentary by Louis Massai, and excuse me, I think I'm fairly tuned up on Du Bois. I haven't read a lot, but he was one of the first black intellectuals, if not the first American black intellectual, and he saw the solution to our salvation as the elimination of ignorance. But then you're talking about now we're constantly in the cycle of trying to keep the population completely uninformed or misinformed.
Yeah.
And when you look at a Tim Wise documentary, it makes you wonder, as we embark on our next project, one of the discussions we're having, like, who is this for? Are we trying to sway the mainstream, or is this to educate people that are already somewhat in tune to get them to see things differently, or even give a wider gaze, like to connect the dots even further than what we've already laid down as a groundwork, just smooth, like if we had we start out with a dirt road and then we put some rocks. Now, is it to put asphalt down so that it's clearer what this is about, or maybe not everybody's built for this, or maybe it's a matter of just having the information there and leaving those breadcrumbs so that maybe when people are ready for it, they have access to it. I don't know.
Well, what's scary is that the world that we're in right now, it's just a consequence of people caught up in what is feel-good hatred. You have a scapegoat. Someone's convinced you that your condition is a consequence of this particular person or that particular person.
Right.
You buy into that narrative, and so...
Well, yeah, the divide and conquer is strong, but it's always been strong, but, it's interesting. I go back to when we were talking to Lunell, she's, black folks, we're either conditioned or we are by nature, to generally be warm, not have, the hate is eliminated from us, the anger is eliminated from us, but it's hard for me to believe sometimes that it's not just, like we talk about being pro-black or being proud to be black doesn't mean being anti-white, but there's some people that are so down for preserving, as you said, prestige, their purity, that they really, how deep the evil runs within some of this is so insidious, some of the things that are happening right now. And I think we saw the Michael Moore play. We didn't post that video where we talked about that, but he equates what's going on now to what was happening in Nazi Germany when Hitler was elected, and that we can't choose to have a blind eye to anything that's
No.
happening?
Because
Because the agenda.
it could be us right now. Because we're easy to label, easy to distinguish. But once they eliminate us, then they're going after someone else, and they'll label they'll other you some way or form, some way, shape or form. That's how they get over. They other you. I mean, if you look the world over, as I said before, it's not just about black and white, because you look in those countries where everyone shares the same skin color. It's about religion. It's a Hutsis and a Tutsis, and
Yeah, I mean, it runs deep. I mean, I can't even, the more you look at these films, even the Stuart Hall, when black immigrants, Jamaicans were moving into England and different populations were moving into England, you saw the same type of rhetoric. It's very easy to get people to hate on this stuff.
Hate Britain white. When the Caribbean and African blacks were moving in.
And what Tim Wise was saying, it's like, look, you can get people to vote against their own self-interest because of that idea of, and I know successful white folks who vote Republican strictly. When we talk to them long enough, it really seems to me the core principle is, I don't want anybody else to have the same things that I have without having to work for them. And the media, it seems, fuels into that. And White Like Me is a great movie because it's talking about how even though clearly the majority of people that benefit from a lot of these social programs are not of color, the image that the media paints is that it's a lot of black folks that are just getting money for free out of your taxes.
Well, along those lines, to your point, on Canopy, what's the guy's name? Bracy?
No, you watch that one.
He talks about how white racism hurts white people. Okay? So,
cut your nose off to spite your face.
there it is, yeah.
So, I don't know how you fix that because it seems to work every time. It's like Colt 45. And on a certain level, I understand it, but I also understand that there's a lot of people in pain. What's happening in Puerto Rico? You want to talk about that?
Well, as my brother Paul Mooney says, they got their wake-up call. You know what I mean?
I don't. You're in the Bronx, so you have a closer connection to all these things.
I know some people say, well, I don't like the term people of color. But people of color, they're brown. That maybe they would have gotten a little more. As Trump says, he gave them 10. The service he gave them was 10. But I think they would have gotten better service if they were, at least if they voted. They're Americans, but they don't vote. But right now...
But they got treated... Puerto Rico's been... Ever since they went in default and declared bankruptcy, I mean, they've always been treated like a stepchild.
Yeah, and then
so
the numbers of the death is going up. Because
of course
these people,
it will.
They're not getting any fresh water.
Yeah, I mean, people say I have to drink this poison water or else I'll die.
One thing a roach even needs is water.
Yeah, but people are literally saying I'm gonna take my chances because I know either way death is certain. If I don't drink, I'm gonna die, and if I do drink, I'll at least survive today. But I mean, the whole administration has failed us. I mean, and it just, if there are cracks in the system, they're the dam is just about to break. But meanwhile, the fiddler still plays.
Or did he throw
Trump instead of playing the violin, Trump he'll be tweeting.
Did he throw any towels
DC
at
burns.
people in Florida?
No.
Huh.
Okay, well, touche.
What bugs me is how, the only people who can show any kind of integrity and call this guy what he is, they're on the way out.
Mm-hmm. Everybody has a fear. There's a fear factor that they'll lose their power if they challenge him.
And then somebody wants to applaud them because all of a sudden they have some guts. No. You can impress me if you ain't worried about losing your position, or you're not going to rerun.
Mm-hmm. We've seen it happen before in the United States. This is fascism. Even in the McCarthy era, who spoke up, who named names. When people's backs are against the wall, when do they finally speak? It's not even, to me, it's not really about speaking. It's fighting. I mean, another thing is the Harvey Weinstein, which I talked a lot about on the radio show. I have my opinion about it, but I don't know if you have what your take on this whole thing is.
Here's the tricky thing again. And you have to be very artful the way you phrase it, but
of course. Yeah, well, they're victims, yes. We don't want to be insensitive to anybody who has been assaulted or has been abused by any sexual predator or anything. So to make that clear, but in terms of the dynamics of power and how it works and who chooses to speak up and when. That's what I'm interested in.
But we have a man in office who clearly articulated sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you going to be upset over what the allegations are against Weinstein, and then these same people who are upset over that voted for this man and put him in office?
Mm-hmm.
That's duplicity. That's hypocrisy.
It's completely hypocritical. What people choose to be upset about versus choosing to turn a blind eye on, and the divide and conquer. When does it become your problem?
The other thing is, it's a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as I told you before, if you shoot my cat, I'm going to do what?
I'm going to kill your dog.
I'm going to kill your dog, right? So we've already had the outing of the sexual abuse from people like the Fox people, O'Reilly, Ailes, the conservatives. Mm-hmm. So now the conservatives say, well, it ain't just us now, right? So now they come out with Harvey Weinstein, and part of that whole outing is, are you liberal people going to return the money that he funded you guys and all that? Look at this. Oh, you can't just say it's us.
It's a tit for tat.
Okay, tit for tat. Now the other thing is to show you. You shoot my cat, I kill your dog. Look what just happened with the committee to investigate if Trump has any Russian ties. Split. Mm-hmm. The Democrats are going their way, the Republicans are going their way. What do the Republicans focus on now? Hillary, saying that she's the one that funded this whole thing.
For it, yeah. She put money into the dossier that revealed the P tape exists.
So it's all about.
So where's the P tape? Where are the people who've been victimized directly by Trump? They're still in fear. I mean, he's no less of a bully than Harvey Weinstein. If you read some of what Weinstein's brother was saying about how he would physically and verbally abuse him, it's a form of mental illness. And you could take and replace Weinstein's name with Trump, and you'd say, I believe that too. It's the same story. It's abuse of power. It was absolute power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And these guys, it just bothers me that you got to wait till they're on their way out before you say anything.
I just love it. These guys, they get on, they're so pompous and arrogant. O'Reilly's on there. He's castigating people. Oh, take ownership of what you do. If you don't have a job or you're not making it, don't blame anybody else. It's your fault.
Right.
So soon as he gets caught, they say he paid $30-something million out in lawsuits. Mm-hmm. Is he blaming himself? No, he's even going so far to blame God for what happened to him. Mm-hmm. And how it's hurting him and his family.
He's a bunch of bullshit.
He's a pig.
Well, same thing, going back to what Ice Cube was saying about Trump. He's like, people, maybe it's cause to think. I mean, the Me Too hashtag, it definitely gave people an opportunity for them to express how much pain and trauma they've gone through because of sexual abuse and predators and unsolicited approaches and things. And I think human beings, they all have to look at one another and say, take ownership of any kind of pain that they've caused. But even like Trump never apologizes. They asked, he was on the lawn the other day saying, what about this woman in Florida? Do you apologize to her? He wiggled around every single thing. He didn't want to apologize to the wife of LaDaniels.
One of the soldiers
the soldier was killed. He's like, I spoke to her. He can't bring himself to apology, and but I think if that's what the goal is, healing, apology is necessary. Well, it's not forgiveness; it's apology.
Here's what kills me. We know what a pig he is, mm-hmm. and they always want to talk about how the great soldier John Kelly has come in to kind of bring some kind of integrity into that milieu, that environment. Mm-hmm. You never hear Trump say anything about Putin, mm-hmm. anything against Russia. Mm-hmm. Anytime, specifically when blacks are involved, he attacked Kaepernick. Yeah. And then when the congresswoman was in the car, mm-hmm. who helped this mm-hmm. family, it wasn't like she's some interloper.
Right.
She overheard what he said. Mm-hmm. Now, Kelly gets on and says, I told him what to say. Maybe he didn't exactly put it in that tone or in that way. Maybe it didn't come out that way.
He knew what he said.
But if he's explaining that, he didn't have to go as far to say this was an empty barrel, her remarks, and what she did was beyond reproach. Oh. And he called her an empty barrel. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's the same thing Comey did with Hillary. He could have said, we're not going to investigate Hillary, but what she did, she still was wrong. And then later on, he comes out with, we're investigating her, but he never said anything about how we're investigating Trump. So the misogyny is there, and the racism is there. Call it what you want to call it. As say I'm playing the race card, but isn't it funny how he can go after people of color, Trump, and then Kelly, who's supposed to have a little more dignity about doing things, how he messed this whole thing up by attacking the congresswoman. They're hypocrites, they're duplicitous, and their rednecks are showing every time a black person says something they don't like.
Well, I mean, the proof is in the pudding, because one of the people that really came after him the hardest was Eminem.
Yeah.
He said, fuck Trump. Right? And everybody's like, well, we can't wait to see what Trump is going to say.
Yeah.
Still waiting for them tweets. So it's very clear. I mean, hopefully people are paying attention and they understand,
like Baba Dick said,
what this is about.
The universal God will get him.
Well, he's starting some things with Korea, that frightens me. I mean, we may be pushing to another Cold War scenario now. And, America loves having enemies. We always have to have a target, to go after. And it seems, but this is a nuclear Holocaust level.
There are three people, Congress people, who are going after Trump verbally. McCain, Corker, and now Flake. Maxine Waters.
She's a rep.
Yes, she's a congressperson too. But Flake is a senator, but the thing is, they make up the Congress. The whole thing is this. Don't tell me that I have to salute the flag or get up and be patriotic with the flag, right? Don't put a limit on my First Amendment rights when you don't want me to put a limit on your Second Amendment rights.
Yes.
Okay? If you want to say there are limitations to my First Amendment rights, then listen to my feelings about the limitations that should be placed on Second Amendment rights. Okay? We don't need people to have the ability to go in and buy an assault rifle. That's not what the Second Amendment was all about.
Right.
And the other thing is the whole idea of Second Amendment rights, along with all the other rights, is that this country was formed as a consequence of protests against the colonists under the British rule, saying we do not feel we're being treated fairly. Taxation without representation, we're being treated unfairly. As Malcolm X said, I learned about what it takes to be a revolutionary because I learned to read about Patrick Henry and George Washington. These are people who protested against the British rule.
Well, I don't know if you saw, I reposted the Ken Burns clip on Instagram, just to give it a little more play, where he's just talking about, this country's, the Constitution is formed, we all are born with certain unalienable rights. But at the same time, the people that wrote that had slaves, were depriving people of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So you have that divide.
The very things they fought for, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they denied to a people.
Yes. So we all have that mess to clean up. Or we must continue to fight. We can't assume it's over.
And don't tell me to honor, by standing up, I'm honoring the servicemen. Well, where was your honoring the servicemen when someone who did go to fight, John McCain, you said he was a coward because he got caught. He wasn't a hero because he got caught. You couldn't have been anything like McCain because you used 7 deferments, bone spurs and whatever, to stay out of the war. And the only one to bring that up was McCain recently, where he said, first of all, it's just like in the Free State of Jones. There's a line where they said, you know what? It's the poor people and their children who are fighting the rich man's wars. These sons of guns got all kind of ways to get out of fighting a war that they start.
I hate to break it. We made another one real soon. That's inevitable. I mean, I think, regardless if Hillary were, I don't think it'd be Korea, but this country profits off of war.
Oh yeah.
So it's almost like we have to continue this.
And Eisenhower spoke on that.
There's a prison industrial complex. Money is being made off of.
Well, first of all, look at what he wants to do with Iran. Okay. And you see, Iran is a smokescreen. Iran wants to have the same right to nuclear power that Israel has.
Absolutely.
All right?
And Obama made a deal.
America wants to go around and tell people that they shouldn't have nuclear weapons.
Yeah, Team
Well,
America.
in the
World
history of
Police.
nuclear weapons, who's the only one that used it?
Against Asians.
Against people of color.
Yes.
Yes.
And well, yeah, and we're bombing Syria as we speak. Bombs are going off.
Yes.
Drones. We're killing people right now.
We're using drones, and right away they want to say, well, you jumping on Trump. What about or what Obama did with the drones and how many innocent people he killed? Okay. You want to go that route? But the thing is this. We're using drones because we're in a point in time where we ain't never went and put boots on the ground and be able to defeat the Vietnamese. And this whole thing when they went over in Iraq created ISIS. That, you know, Bush is patting his chest. Big. What we've done over in Iraq, that was just something, a revenge, retribution for what he felt happened to his dad. And once again, who made money behind that war? Okay, but the thing is, look at the can of worms that opened up with ISIS. They created ISIS with that war.
Without question. Well, it's interesting. Woody King, one of the early plays that they put on at New Federal Theater was "Don't Fear, Charlie Can't Win Nothing on the Ground." You know, in relation, I think it was a Leroy Jones play or a Mary Baraka play, but the concept was we can have a revolution of black people in America because Charlie ain't won nothing on the ground. They have to bomb you. You know, so any you know it alludes to like the spooker sat by the door kind of thing of that time period. But I mean, you know, so just taking away from political stuff, there's a couple more things I definitely want to make sure we talk about. Robert Guillaume was another person who transitioned this week.
Yes.
And you know, I mean,
we miss Connie Hawkins also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Basketball, well, you know, you New York people. But Guillaume, I mean, it's very interesting, his career. Now, I don't, you know, I watch this Archive of American Television interview, and if you have time, even if you're like working, that's something to play. It's like 3 or 4 hours of him talking about his life and career. You know, this is a gentleman who, talented singer, on Broadway for years, all inspired, did all the things, you know, came up through the Camus Theater and all this stuff, but didn't have his first success until he was in his 40s, playing Benson, basically. And I think a lot of people, they see him as that, or they see him as the kid from left field, those movies with Gary Coleman, or Sports Night, or things like that, as a TV actor.
Or maybe they didn't see him in the Superfly TNT, right?
Superfly TNT. Well, that's pre-Benson. But I want to give him a response. But I think he's one of those people that navigated his success by ignoring his blackness to a certain extent. Like he never denied his blackness, but he found ways to. He didn't make that part of his deal. You know.
Let me just say, another sweet soul has transitioned, but I hate what he had to go through when he played the Phantom of the Opera.
I was going to get to that. He speaks to that in the documentary. You know, he was the first. Now, keep in mind, we talked to Terry Carter.
Yes.
That play, I forget the name of the play with her.
Like Caramoo or something.
Yeah. He was an understudy on that play on Broadway. So he started in the 50s on Broadway. After Benson, he was the first black Phantom of the Opera, and he did it for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
But the ticket sales plummeted, and they had to take him off. He continued to do the role, touring.
Yes.
But there was a lot of hate. You want to speak to that?
Well, all I know is that no one wanted to go see him. Beautiful voice. but the fact that he was black, once again,
They couldn't accept him, and
color raises. Um, that specter comes about, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about: the issue of color and how it just comes in. Color matters.
yeah. And ultimately, it's no. We could speak a little bit about. I mean, most people don't know the movie. I don't think it's on YouTube even. Superfly TNT. Everybody knows Superfly, unless you really are like a crate digger. You might not know there's a sequel. There are 2 sequels actually to Superfly, and neither of them are on DVD.
Who did the screenplay for Superfly TNT?
I'll let you talk. Superfly TNT 1973 movie. TNT tain't nothing to it.
Or as the critics say, yeah, tain't nothing to it.
Well, I guess TNT is dynamite, but
Right.
it's sort of like respect. Was it RSP, RES, PECT, TCB? People say, TCB.
Take care of business.
Yeah, there you go. You're a certain age. A lot of people. She says so fast, most people don't even know. It's almost like that. This is a side post where they say Jimi Hendrix, where he says they had a whole book out. Excuse me while I kiss this fly, because people didn't understand the lyrics. And then of course Cheech and Chong, he says, "Excuse me while I eat this fly."
Yeah.
But it's cute. Excuse me while I kiss the sky.
Scott.
Take nothing to it. But anyway, Alex Haley wrote this.
Alex Haley.
And Ron O'Neill's in it. They go over to Africa, right? And it's a nice scene. Obviously, wastes a lot of money and time over there because there's like Robert Guillaume, his opening scene, he's singing in the movie the first time you see him. So there's a lot of opportunities for people to do things. I don't know if audiences were ready or even the screenplay was ready. This is Alex Haley's one and only feature film screenplay that was made. So
We got to make a note of this. Superfly TNT, because I just said we're going to show how color matters. Also, when we talk about art, Superfly was a big hit, tremendous hit.
yeah,
But it received so much negative criticism. It was one of the things the CAB, the Coalition Against Black Exploitation, they jumped on that film more than any other film. And Superfly became the poster boy for the term blaxploitation. But a good friend of ours who did a wonderful documentary and that's Brother Walker, who has a historic name, David Walker. I believe it's in his documentary.
because he interviews Ron O'Neill.
There's
a full interview with Ron O'Neill that David Walker has on his YouTube channel.
And I think a piece of it is on YouTube. YouTube is wonderful for this kind of stuff. But
He put all the raw footage from the interviews on there.
And he says, because that's what we're discussing, the role of the artist. But the thing is, what really went in here from listening to Ron said one thing he learned from the failure of that particular film to be anywhere near the success that the Superfly was. He said, I was not true to myself. He was so busy trying to make up for what the first one was criticized for, that he lost his compass in trying to do this film. So he tried to make it revolutionary. It didn't have to do with drugs.
Yeah.
He got away from what he wanted to say.
Right, and to that point, I think the thing about Guillaume is that he was one of the artists that I believe he left the country for a while. And when you're in the 60s and you're an artist and you leave the country, and Debbie Allen, the same thing. They spent a lot of time in Mexico. You get a different sense of who you are and how much of this bullshit you choose to buy into. Like I buy into it because I'm in pain when I see other people injustice. so much of what we do is about, we have the technology. We're sitting in a coffee shop in the Bronx talking, and people, shout out your hometown in the comments. I want to know where you're watching this from. But the fact that we can take basically $300 worth of equipment and go anywhere and talk and share it with the planet is great. And that's a sense of freedom. But at the same time, how you say how long will talents like Robert Gilman have to wait till they're damn near 50 to make a mark, and then we know it's sort of pigeonholed stereotype,
Red Fox.
Red Fox. No, granted,
Bill Bojangles Robinson.
A lot of it is trying to just get, while we have the ability, these are the people we care about. These are the people. This is the information we think is important that maybe you won't get validation from because it doesn't hit the mainstream, or maybe it only speaks to a certain core, or just enlighten people a little bit. But the thing also about, so he left the country. I mean, he just chose not to buy into that. Like, I'm not that. I'm me. I know my talent, and on a certain level, it's what you have to do to survive. Because there's so many more. There's more talent that doesn't get seen and does get seen, and that's just part of the deal. But at the same time, when he did get Benson, now he didn't executive produce Benson. I don't know if he was still getting checks, but he certainly was respected talent. Like, New York Times obituary was very nice, although the first third of it was Benson. Mm-hmm. It did go into the fact that, this is a good man, because he had a stroke in the middle of doing Sports Night. And Aaron Sorkin was one of his shows. He wrote the stroke into the plot. He said, "I want this man working." Mm-hmm. He's of value to what I have to say. So, to my knowledge, he didn't make enemies, and people respected his talent. Nothing but good things to say. And the thing about Benson, now it's a show. I didn't watch all 20 seasons or whatever it was, but here's a character on soap. It was just sort of like, it was wisecracking, sort of, I'm going to be the help that's a little smarter than everybody in the room, mm-hmm. and I'm going to make my sly remarks. And people liked it. They spun that off into his own show, which was on for 4 or 5 years. By the end of the very last episode, he's running for governor.
Yes.
So you have to respect that.
He did a role in, back in the day, when I had the shop, mm-hmm. One of our favorites was Jean-Claude Van Damme. Mm-hmm. And I always used to make a comparison between Van Damme films and Steven Seagal films.
Yes.
And my observation was that the blacks in Van Damme films had better roles. Mm-hmm. Steven Seagal's films, they were like embarrassing. But Guillaume played in one of Van Damme's. I can't think of them. They were in jail together. And Guillaume's character just shows you how so many of our actors, you remember them for certain types of roles, but you see their acting ability when they can do something that's very different from let's say, you know him for comedy. He's in a serious role, and he was quite good. I liked him in that role. People could look it up, Guillaume and Van Damme, what film I'm talking about.
Well, and to me, that really speaks to my core thing. I always go back to Malcolm Gladwell, and shout out to Malcolm Gladwell, just catching up on his podcast. I was telling you, he's got stories that he tells on his podcast that are very similar to Marshall in terms of with Vernon Jordan. But that book Outliers, it's like, okay, all right, I know what we're up against. The people that really just still see black folks as subhuman, or we're supposed to be their toy, or we're child, or whatever it is.
Can I get some water, please?
Oh yeah. Shout out to Julius. But so I get it if people see you as subhuman. frankly, in terms of art, I don't think it's about trying to make people have empathy for us.
Thank you.
Would you like some water?
Yes, please, and we'll wrap it up in a minute. But as far as the art goes, it's like I'm like for us by us at this point. I just don't think there's enough time to convince people otherwise. If there's so many other choices that people have, you know what you're tuned into. So
I would say black folk have to be very conscious of the fact that they are not wanted here. We are not wanted here.
right,
Okay?
yes,
We, to your point, we are not seen as full human beings.
right,
We never were.
right,
And they created the narrative, but it was a belief system for the worst kind. But they sold that racist narrative where too many people bought into it and profited off of it because that's where white privilege comes in. What Tim Wise is saying, he's empathetic to it from the way he was raised.
The story of OJ. Now we talk about that, but yeah, like or Chris Rock says, it's like, hey, there's not a single white person in this room that would trade places with me, and I'm rich. That whole concept of whiteness
Kentucky,
is crazy.
the poorest of the poor. White folks in Appalachia, the kids' teeth are falling out. That no one, if they went and got the kids, were trying the programs put in place to give the kids education. My brother told me the kids are learning how to read and have to read to their family, their fathers and mothers.
Right.
But they can say one thing: we ain't NIGGERS.
Yeah, and the piece we're watching, the piece that you were watching, if we were heading off the cliff anyway, it's sort of like Trump has just put his foot on the gas, and I don't know what can be done to stop it, but I do know black people have always survived. We have resilience. But if it's really about looking at the planet and looking at the world and saying, these are the problems, what can we do to solve them or fix them or change things, then you can't eliminate so much of the population from bringing their brain power and their knowledge and intelligence, just from school. There are a lot of people that don't speak up. Just from the comments section, there are a lot of people, they have the answer, but either they don't want to raise their hand or somebody else has beat them to the punch. But it's like all hands on deck if we're gonna fix this. So Ta-Nehisi, he's coming to Philly next week. His book, we had 8 years.
Yeah.
Well, maybe so. I don't know. I know a lot of people that watch this feel differently about that Trump thing. It was about the Obama era, but it definitely gave us a glimpse into how things can change. Whether it was fulfilled and what prevented it. That's a topic for whole volumes of discussion. I can't wait for Obama's book. Hillary's book came out fast, didn't it?
Yeah.
But Obama, when that comes out, that's going to be a huge bestseller, and it's going to be very interesting.
What's important is, as from the outset I was saying, we're in this position, this condition, because of too many people are misinformed. As it was said, if you don't read the papers, you're uninformed.
Right.
If you do read the papers, you're misinformed. Ideally, know enough how to be well informed.
Amen to that. So, that's an hour of us eating. The food was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, while we're digesting this, we hope what we had to speak on. Some people take time maybe to digest what we just had to speak about, and then we'll digest on the comments. That's what we learned.
Yeah, so if you haven't commented before, this is time to raise your hand. Even if it's just give us a shout out. Where are you? We're in the Bronx. Where are you watching? Hopefully you're not on the toilet watching. But what city? Don't be so specific. Like, hey, I'm in the token booth. No, I need to know what city you're watching from, because that'll be fun. And then before we go. The jokes. All right, so these racist corporations, man. When will they learn? I don't know. They need to hire more black people or what? Or maybe it's black people doing it. I don't know who's doing it. But since we last talked, Dove soap got into some trouble, and woke up this morning. Kellogg's Corn Pops started some dumb nonsense, and they got to apologize. It's like. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. It's like, do they really want our money?
Well, what happened?
Well, this morning, I'll show the picture.
That was yesterday's news.
Yesterday, yeah. Okay. Well, Twitter. This guy on Twitter jumped on it. Apparently, they had to pull all the boxes of Kellogg's Corn Pops off the shelves because on the back of it there was like a picture or a game, and they had all these Corn Pops like Corn Popville. And everybody's doing stuff, playing arcade games and doing this and going to work. And then they're all yellow.
Okay.
And then there's one Corn Pop that's brown. He's down in the lower part of the frame. And he's dressed as a janitor with headphones on and a floor waxer. And somebody on Twitter said, hey, that's racist, Kellogg's. And they're like, oops, my bad. And so it's like, well, somebody had to... You would... Really? Kellogg's? Really? I mean, you saw the image. What is this about?
Playing devil's advocate.
Okay.
And we get this all the time when we talk. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Even
the trolls jump out.
Someone's going to say, oh, you guys...
You're too sensitive. You should be happy
you keep
that you got a brown
Trump. What about Obama? You're always talking about race. About this. So I said, well, some of these people are raising some good points now, Mike.
Okay. Devil's advocate now.
Okay. So they're saying... You ain't got no white pops. They're all yellow.
Well, no, they were all saying that they're basically reading the yellow pops as being white people. Like most of the people are like, oh, those are the white pops because the brown pop was the janitor. Right. So they said, well, and then one of the comments was like, well, you should be happy. There's nothing wrong with being a janitor.
Right.
At least the brown pop was employed. Everybody else was not employed. It's like, okay, nah. But that's deflecting off the inherent racism of, okay, well, if they're all the same, I'd hate to open up the box.
Are we oversensitive?
Well,
that's the question. Is it legitimate?
I think you got to call it out. I think you got to call out all that ignorance because clearly. Well, finish your point, and then we'll jump to Dove soap because that's even more ignorant. I mean, it's almost like every month.
The Dove I didn't like.
Well, finish the Corn Pop soap. But
okay.
Every month it seems like these corporations are in a position where they've got to defend themselves against some insensitive, racist thing that probably should have been caught well before it was published.
Okay, I agree with some people saying. I think, to a large degree, this political correctness can get on your nerves. Okay, there are a lot of things you don't want me to say because I say I don't agree with a lot of people about a lot of things.
That goes to the Warren Hutchinson. Warren Hutchinson, comedian. He said his father raised him Muslim. He said you got to look at this stuff. It's like, why are the green olives in the jar, but then when you got the black olives, they're in a can where they can't see the light. It's tricks to it, man.
Yeah.
It's tricks to it.
Yeah.
Why is the brown corn? First off, there are no brown. If you found a brown corn pop in your box, you'd send it back.
Or some of the things Dr.
So it
Francis
doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
That
so
she uses with the
black
come ball.
On, Kellogg's, you're teaching racism to kids. The one corn pop that the brown kid can identify with is a freaking janitor. With a floor waxer? Come on.
Like, is that the thing with chess? Who gets who moves first in chess and checkers?
Yeah, yeah.
And the pool table.
Gamesmanship.
Game, but the thing is, I do feel it's important that these things are scrutinized.
Mm-hmm.
That we don't need the boxes to be put out there. And then I don't know. This guy must have a lot of time on him. Like, you accuse me of having too much time on my hand, but because I didn't even see the guy, it had to be circled.
It, yeah.
Yeah. I said, well, damn, is somebody studying Kellogg's boxes? Who would notice this stuff?
Well, it's all subliminal. Everything is.
But then there's not one pop. They're yellow, all the same, but he is a little darker.
He's brown.
Yeah, he's brown. But we also went through that crap with the first black president was a black man. That's bogus, and a lot of people bought into that nonsense.
So it didn't bother you that much, that one?
Well, a whole lot of people bought into it.
No, I'm talking about the corn pops. You give them Kellogg's a pass?
No, I'm not giving them a pass. But I'm just saying, yeah, we do need people to be in this day and age.
Well, I mean, it's just, who's the gatekeepers? How does that even get out? Who's in the room when they approve this stuff? Who's paying attention at that level where they, because social media, you say or do the wrong thing, you risk boycott. That stuff should be hyper scrutinized before it's even sent to the printer. At some point, somebody should catch it, and say, hey, like even, Young Turks I watch all the time. They came out after Bic because Bic refused to print their Trump propaganda. And they say, well, it's like, look, I'm paying you to do this. And Bic is like, look, we don't, you're making fun of the president, we don't want to print this. Now, clearly, a company like Bic, if it came out that Bic was printing Trump propaganda, it could affect their bottom line. So they're just like, I don't want to do this. And that's their right to turn their business down. So, but I just think it comes down to gatekeepers and who's in the room. And clearly, the demise of the black-owned advertising agency has a lot to do with it. I mean, there's at a certain point in time, there was a lot of power with Johnson Publications. It also brought along and soul-trained black-owned advertising agencies that basically specialize, we talk about brainwash, those guys specialize in creating marketing specifically geared to black audiences. And as we became more diversified, there was less of a need for that. And so now you have a lot of white folks determining marketing for everybody. So I just don't see how you green light that image and think it's a good idea.
I just want you to remember this conversation, because all I'm saying is not to excuse it, not to defend it.
Okay.
But I just feel
it's getting out of hand.
If we're going to scrutinize this and blame it on some insensitive white folk, let's not give our people a pass when there's a lot of crap in the movies that they're in charge of that I get upset with.
So Dove soap.
I didn't like that.
So it was a gift. Like originally the symbolism. The morning the picture came out, but then they showed the animation. It was sort of like one of them Michael Jackson things where they morph the black woman puts a shirt on and morphs into a white woman, and that's Dove soap.
It was reminiscent of the old ads they used to have when they were promoting the power of using a certain type of soap and how it would get you so clean.
Like, what is it, Gold Dust Twins?
Gold Dust Twins, but like the little white kid is saying, well, it worked for me.
Racist. So yeah, I mean they should. Yeah, that hurt. Dove soap. Because I use the product. It's...
And the black model, a couple of days after she came in, kind of defended it. She didn't feel exploited or anything like that.
Oh, they need to pay her double then, but does she get paid the same as the white actress? That'd be my question. Okay, so you didn't feel exploited. How much did you get paid? Did you get paid the same as the white girl that'd be the first question I would ask her. Were you happy to get the job? Was this a value for you? You know, but I mean, clearly she didn't know what she was in, what she was doing, and then also, what market is it for? Like a lot of times when these things come out, we're seeing ads like those Japanese toothpaste and things like that, where they're not as sensitive to certain things within the culture. But I do. My understanding is this was a global or an ad targeted for American audience. It's just wrong, and I think it's.
I wanted to go see if I can catch some of the local stores. They may still have one of those boxes on the counter.
Oh, the corn pops?
Yeah.
I think they poured all that crap.
Maybe
Dollar Tree.
Wow, I wonder if they. Yeah, I'm gonna try it. Look, they sell Kellogg's. I'd like to get the box.
Well, all right. Well, we'll see if we can find one. But so
what
in closing,
was it? Corn pops? Kellogg's corn pop?
Somebody.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna give you a pop test.
Okay. All right. We're wrapping it up here.
Who's your dad?
Pop. Well, actually, my dad, my grandfather, we called him Pop Pop. So it was my Pop Pop. But shout out to James A. Dennis.
Who? To who?
James A. Dennis, my grandfather. Pop Pop.
Okay. What's his last name?
Dennis.
Dennis. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
you're a wise man.
But I think it needs to be. He's running out of steam. I can tell. I think we have to be hyper vigilant until we have control over these things. A core problem why these things perpetuate is lack of not empathy. I don't necessarily care how people feel, but we're expected to feel all their pain, and then if we say this bothers us, we're ignored. And I think people need to speak up and say, hey, that's not right. That's not right. Dove, look, you're going to be out of business if you keep this up. And that's not the first time that Dove soap has done that, So, I give no quarter to a lot of it, but at the same time, every morning when you get on Twitter, you wake up and there's a new thing to be outraged against. And I think sometimes we lose focus of what the real fight, what the real things are, and a lot of it serves as distraction.
Right quick, Mike. I told you I was damn near tears. Doing a lot of research. I watched Tyra Banks, some of her shows on bleaching. And one of the girls said, you don't know what I had to go through as a kid, how I was teased because of my dark skin. And when she literally put bleach on her face, and her face was peeling, but she was so embarrassed by her skin color that she felt she had to do something to change it. To live like that, unless you walk in someone's shoes, unless you experience that,
right.
That gets to what we first opened with, where the women are coming out against Harvey Weinstein, and people are sympathetic to these women.
Yeah.
Well, when are you going to be sympathetic to blacks saying Black Lives Matter? If you want to say Black Lives Matter too, to make it real, that they're not just talking about Black Lives Matter, no other lives matter. When you know what blacks have to face, the conditions they have to face in this country, and you, in Tim Wise, what they talk about, was it Tim Wise, where the guy had to become black like me, Griffith, so that he could really experience what it was like to be black.
Yeah.
If you don't know what it's like to be black, you can appropriate blackness and talk cool and whatnot, but when you can go through life, and see, me, it's been a little easier, but the darker you are, the tougher it is in this damn country to be treated and feel like a human.
Yeah. Well, amen to that. Yeah. So the correct answer, if I say my foot hurts, the correct answer is not my foot hurts too. It's like, what can I do to ease your pain? I understand. I might not feel your pain, but what can I do to make it better? So extending that, it's not And so many people want to commiserate, and we're all guilty of it. It's a reaction. Sometimes people just want understanding. They don't want, and that leads us to the solution, you know.
Yeah.
But the correct answer to, oh, I'm in pain is, you know, oh, I'm in pain too.
Yeah, I feel for every woman that had to be subjected to that nasty son of a gun jumping on her.
Yeah.
You know, why didn't one of their boyfriends come and beat the shit out of that son of a gun?